look out for your people, trust, all that basic stuff. I mentioned what Field Marshal Montgomery said. Back when I was a second lieutenant and I was struggling with how to do what to do and how to handle it, when I showed up at my first platoon, I started as an artillery officer, so I was a forward observer in 11th Marines up at Pendleton. Every private and lance corporal and officer in the battery I checked into had at least one row of ribbons from Vietnam. And I showed up with the National Defense Medal, not feeling at all like the hero, and certainly without combat experience. So I started struggling around, and how did I find out, and what should I do? And the gunny took me aside and said, just do your job. And the colonel, when I was standing duty one night, came in and dropped on my desk this book. It was a tattered, paper-bound book, and it was entitled The Marine Corps Manual. Now, for the Marines here, and for everybody here, the numbers of instructions and orders by which the military is directed and regulated today would fill this room if it was on single-page paper, typed. This is the Marine Corps Manual of 1921. The Marines know it because it's part of it is read at the birthday ball every year. I'm telling you, go read Chapter 4. Everybody go read Chapter 4 of the Marine Corps Manual. It's online. It's 4 pages. There's only 2 pages that make a difference. And the most that it has to say in that comes down to this. This is the words of General Lejeune when he is the Commandant of the Marine Corps writing to his Marines on how to be officers. The relationship between officers and men should in no sense be that of superior to inferior, nor that of master and servant, but rather that of teacher and scholar. In fact, it should partake of the nature of the relationship between father and son, to the extent that officers are responsible for the physical, mental, moral welfare, as well as the discipline and military training of the young people under their command. Okay, so that's 1921. That's 3 ages ago in general leadership principles. So I offer you the gouge that everybody's looking for in how to make that first transition. The answer is, be a good parent. Be a good parent, and you will become a great officer. With that, let me go back to the notion of character, the notion of mistakes junior officers make. And I'm going to run down some things and then ask the panel to comment on the importance of keeping your word. Balancing the importance of the mission and taking care of your people. How do you balance that? When does one supersede the other? Keeping your people informed. When do you tell them what they need to know? And when do you tell them why they're doing what they're doing? How and when to praise, and on occasion, how and when to criticize. And finally, discipline. It's an officer's role to keep order. How do you handle that when you're a junior officer? So let me begin in the middle. Captain McGill, let me start with you. Any and all of that.
Any and all of that. Thank you. I'll just go with an example of a time when I had to discipline one of my guys, and I mean, I would say as a generic rule, discipline in private and then praise in public is a place to deviate from, if nothing else. So with this particular guy, he's an outstanding sergeant as far as his work responsibilities. His personal life a little bit jacked up, and you'll see that tends to be a theme throughout. But he got caught with a suspended license, so his license got revoked, and then he got caught driving on base with a suspended license. So now I've got a sergeant who is actually the most senior enlisted member in my shop, who is basically now in trouble, up for NJP. So I have to first bring him in private and say, hey, what are the actual facts? He ends up, I wouldn't say lying, but skirting the truth to a point where I had questions about his character. So basically, I had to say, listen, the rules are the rules. You broke the rules. You're now admitting that you did. So we're going to have to put you up for NJP. Meanwhile, there's no replacement inbound, et cetera. So this guy is going to be my senior guy in charge of my shop, whether I like it or not. So now it becomes more of a matter of, hey, we have to discipline you. We'll do so as privately as possible. Rumor or word is going to get around to everybody else, and it does. But then I look immediately for ways to build him back up. So I put him in increased areas of responsibility, and I make it incumbent upon him to prove to me that he still has what it takes to be an NCO. So by putting him in, I put him in charge of the entire embarkation for our unit. I think we're going from Miramar to Fallon, Nevada. And I was like, hey, you are the point man on this. Here's your chance to sink or swim and to prove to me you have what it takes. He knocked it out of the park. So, he basically did a 180. So while it started out with me having to punish him, basically putting him in a place where he was afforded the opportunity to recover and then succeed from there, I think was what was paramount. So overall, though, I would just say behind closed doors would be the best place to start from with punishing anybody, just because people take a lot of pride in their pride. So as soon as you take that away from them, things can go south in a hurry from there. So that would just be my starting advice.
Major Jemison, let me move to you. You've served as company commander a few times.
Yep.
Same question to you.
Okay. So I think we kind of touched on this with the last question too, and that's knowing your people. Knowing your subordinates is very important, especially since you guys are going to be with them all around the world, potentially in very isolated conditions that are very challenging. And so this was my experience as a lieutenant. My very first assignment was in southern Germany, which by the face value should be wonderful. But what I will tell you is that there were 3 other female lieutenants at the garrison that I was operating at. And they were in different life stages. They were having children. They were married. I wasn't either one of those things. So we didn't have a lot in common. And I worked in a very small office. So there was very little interaction with my office mates once the business day was over with. This was before Skype and FaceTime, so it was also hard to stay in contact with my family back home. So I went into isolation mode, and it just made a challenging job that much worse. So what I would offer to you guys is, especially when you are in a garrison environment and you have the time to spend with your subordinates, figure out who they are. Figure out what their hobbies are, how they relieve stress, whether it's working out or if they like to, socialize with their family, and figure out what makes them tick. Because what you will find is once you go on duty, it doesn't stop. It is 24/7 for you, whether you're active duty or guard or reserves. You will be on the clock the whole time. And if you're not keeping a pulse on the health of your soldiers, then things can go haywire pretty quick, and you might not even realize it until it's too late. So I would just offer, when you have the time, make sure that you are getting to know the people around you so that you know right away if something's wrong.
Really important. Let me take it back to a naval context. Lieutenant Melendez, could you weigh in here?
Yes, sir. One of the things that I would say is really important, and specifically coming from the engineering side of the house, is keeping your people informed. There are a lot of jobs that we have in the military that may not seem like they play a vital role in the overall picture, but that's not true. We wouldn't have them if that's not the case. So it's very important to keep your guys informed as to what is actually happening, and to let them know that they're a part of the bigger picture. From the engineering side, the guys are in probably 3-section rotation, standing 5 hours a watch every 15 hours. They're not getting a lot of sleep. They're not seeing a lot of the top side. They're not really realizing what's going on up there. But without them, there is no electricity, there is no propulsion. We're not able to go out there and do ballistic missile defense, and they're playing such a vital role. But if you don't keep them informed as to what they're actually doing and how it contributes to their overall mission, they're not going to get that job satisfaction. If anyone's been on a summer cruise, they've seen people cranking, right? And that seems like such a bad thing, and they're doing it for 6 months, and they didn't sign up to do that in the Navy. However, without them, people aren't getting fed, and they play, and that just goes into a whole big thing. So everybody has a mission, and everyone has a role, and it's your job as a leader, whether it's at quarters, divisional quarters, company quarters, platoon quarters, to push that down to your people and let them know that they are contributing to the overall mission.
Kevin Klopfer, I see you nodding your head down there, so I must ask you to weigh your thoughts in here, please.
I've got nothing to say. They all nailed it. No,
Okay,
just
great.
kidding.
Thank you.
Okay, so when you get into your first unit, so you are going to be there for 1, 2, 3 years before you deploy or PCS again. The number one thing you always have to remember, at least in my line of work, and I'm sure everyone else can attest to this as well, is rely on your senior NCOs and senior enlisted. You don't even have to rely on them necessarily. Just rely on your enlisted, especially when it comes to your first disciplinary issue that you have to run into. So, and it's going to happen. Don't go in there, by yourself, alone and unafraid, and say, this is how we're going to handle this case. Talk to your fellow officers. Talk to your older officers. Talk to your E7s and above, your senior NCOs. Talk to your NCOs, because everyone's gotten in trouble before. Everyone needs to, have that, pick me up. Find out how your unit more or less can operate